Welcome to episode 16 of Matthewlinity. This is part 5 of the 5 parts of Matthew chapter 2. Just looking quickly at chapter 2 in 5 brief episodes. I'll just read through the final verses of chapter 2, which is verses 19 to 23. Then Herod, having died, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Get up, take the child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel. For those who are seeking the life of the child are dead. So, having got up, he took the child and his mother, and he went into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there, and being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the regions of Galilee. And he came and lived in a town called Nazareth, in order that what was said by the prophets would be fulfilled. He will be called a Nazarene. So in this final part, the 5th part of chapter 2, we can see that it's been very geographical, very much based around where things are happening. So it started out in part 1 with the little town of Bethlehem, and now we've finished in part 5 with the little town of Nazareth. So Bethlehem was just out of the capital city of Judea, and Nazareth is just out of the capital city in Galilee. So we've got this balance that's happening geographically. It's around this idea of Jerusalem's not safe. Jerusalem is the place where Jesus will be killed. So it's foreshadowing or preempting the entire story that we're yet to hear. So we might think, oh well, chapter 2 is not very necessary. It's a bit superfluous. We don't really need to know about what's happening when Jesus is an infant. Let's get on to the main story. Well, it's preempting the main story for us. And it's letting us know just how geographical this story is in the book of Matthew. We might not think of it as a story that's based around geography, but that's what we've got. We've got Jesus is at a safe distance from Jerusalem. He grows up north in the Galilee regions, and until it's the right time to face Jerusalem. So that's the structure of Matthew is about when will be the right time to go back to Jerusalem to die, and then once he has died and been resurrected by God, he goes back to Galilee. And so the final mission that he gives his disciples is about going back. Well, let's get back to Galilee first, and then the mission can go out from Galilee. So it's a little bit different from some of the other books of the Gospel where they might not have the ending in Galilee, but in Matthew, Galilee is really important. It's the place of refuge from Jerusalem. Jerusalem is seen to be that's the city that kills Jesus. That's what Jerusalem represents. Jerusalem represents danger. The powers that be at that time in the lifetime of Jesus are depicted as not running the city in a way that's conducive to hearing to prophets. It's the place that kills the prophets, according to Jesus. This is what Jesus will say later on. Jerusalem, O Jerusalem, the place that kills the prophets. So Jesus is depicted very much as he's a prophet who will end up being killed in Jerusalem. And this is This story is set up in chapter 2. Also, we have a strong Exodus theme. So not just prefiguring the story that's going to come, but it's also echoing the story that has already come from the book of Exodus, where the people needed to get out of Egypt. And so Moses was the leader he escaped Egypt, and then he was called to go back into the land of Egypt when those who were seeking your life are dead. That's what Moses was told. Those who were seeking your life are now dead. Go back to Egypt. And so then Moses has this mission of going back to Egypt to bring the people out of Egypt. And so we have the same reference in Matthew chapter 2 about, okay, go back to the land of Israel. Those who are seeking the life of the child are dead. So this is echoing this same theme of, we've got an Exodus theme happening here. Will Jesus bring his people out of a geographical place? Well, we see this a little bit in Matthew, because Matthew ends with let's get out of Jerusalem, go back to Galilee. And so the final mission happens from Galilee. And so we've got this theme of saving his people, and he seems to be wanting to save them from what Jerusalem represents. Somehow Jerusalem is linked with this mission of salvation that Jesus has, where Jerusalem is dangerous to Jesus. Jerusalem is not the place that is conducive to the kind of person that Jesus is, according to the book of Matthew. Now, apparently there's something prophetic about growing up in Nazareth, being identified as a Nazarene, something we don't really know what the reference is, but it says, as the prophets say. So this somehow is telling us that this is in line with the prophets who say he will be called a Nazarene. He will be, somehow his identity will just be growing up in this distant sort of refuge place somewhere in Galilee. It's saying that this is in line with what the prophets are on about. Whether there's a specific reference, it seems like it's not a specific Bible verse, a scripture verse that's being referred to. It's just the prophets. The prophets anticipated that this was the pattern. So he's come from near Jerusalem, but he's escaped into Egypt, and then he's ended up in the northern regions in Galilee, in a little town called Nazareth. So it's not necessarily emphasizing a particular prediction, but the typological nature of growing up in Nazareth. What's going on typologically? So salvation of Exodus, for example, coming out of an empire, somebody else's empire, getting out of that, like trying to extract themselves and get out of Egypt. What Egypt represented for the ancient Israelites, somehow that is relevant for what Jesus is trying to do with rescuing his people, bringing them out of something. What's he bringing them out of? That's something that we'll explore throughout the rest of the book of Matthew. Yeah, so Matthew is using a lot of land-based theology. It's kind of theological, typological, but it's very land-based. It's very geographical. The whole book is structured around this geographical idea of Jerusalem being a dangerous city to Jesus, and so there's going to come a time when Jesus is going to go and face Jerusalem. That's all for this episode. Thank you for listening.